So we have a very unappreciated and underrated holiday this week. May 4th is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. So I thought we should check in with some of our friends to see what they think about this lesson today.
I have a bad feeling about this. I've got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Very bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
A really bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
Quiet.
Whoa.
Ouch. Well, that wasn't very confidence inspiring, was it? Well, I still believe in you guys. I think you can do it.
The Emperor does not share your optimistic appraisal of the situation.
Ouch, that was rough again. Well, regardless of what everybody else's opinion has been, I still expect you guys to try on this homework.
Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
Sorry, Yoda. When you're right, you're right. I stand corrected. So I'm expecting you guys to do this homework.
Timar the Math Wizard, have you seen my father?
I am your father.
No, that's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
No! Timar the Math Wizard, I love you.
I know. Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Duffy.
I'm not gonna like react at all.
Am I supposed to react after he says I know? Oh!
You could
Roll your eyes,
You could be
Cook.
like,
You can just.
Okay.
Algebra 2, we're into 10.6. Today we're talking about solving systems of equations. There's a paper of notes to just do some reminders. Systems of equations just meant you had more than one variable in a problem and you had more than one equation. And we had to find a way to play those off of each other. In chapter 4 we did this. We had 3 methods that we could go about solving these. One would be graphing, which in this chapter would be crazy. It would be very difficult to accurately graph, let's say, an ellipse, and then accurately graph a circle, and then figure out where they're touching each other. That would be pretty difficult to do, because it's hard to even draw a circle. It's hard to draw an ellipse, it's hard to be accurate, it'd be hard to find those touch points, so we are not going to graph. Another oddity on these is, here my circle and ellipse, that would have 4 answers, because it had 4 touch points. But if I had an ellipse and a circle like that, that has no touch points. That would have no answers. If I had an ellipse and then a little tiny circle, no answers because they don't touch. I could do an ellipse and a circle that has 1 touch point. There's a variety of ways these problems can go. There's going to be some with no answers, some with 1, some with 2, some with 3, some with 4. I think 4 is the most we can do. I think 4 is the most common amount, but there's no preset like amount of answers you're guaranteed to look for. There's just aren't, so sorry. But graphing is out. Substitution is what we're going to do today, so I'll do a reminder of the substitution method in a minute. Multiplication addition method is more what's going to happen in 10.7. 10.7 will be a real similar lesson to this in the sense that it's systems of equations again. So the ruling on substitution is you'd like to get an x or a y alone in one of the equations. I started us off with an easy one because this y is already alone. And this is one of the problems, a few problem types this year I've been circling stuff. This substitution method was one of the ones where we definitely were circling areas of the problem because we will have to return here later. We get one of the variables alone and I used to circle it. You don't have to circle it, but I like to circle it because I'm going to need to go back to that area. Second thing we would do is to put this into the other problem. But we're going to want to stick that in where the y is. Since y equals this thing, go to the y in the other problem and stick in the x plus 3. So it looks like x plus 3, still plus 1, still equals x squared minus 2x. Most of what I just did was copy stuff. The only change I made was that the y got replaced with x plus 3 because the circle guy said y is equal to x plus 3. Then we're going to solve for that variable. We only have x's, so I want to solve for x's. When you have x squareds and x's and numbers and lots of stuff, we like to get the problem equal to 0. X squared has no like term friends, so leave that alone. To get this eliminated from its side, since it's adding, we'll do the opposite. We'll subtract an x. If we subtract another x, we'll be down to negative 3x. These numbers are in adding 4. The opposite of adding 4, to get rid of that, would be a subtracting 4. And then we've tried to factor if we can. We'd rather factor than do the quadratic formula. So I go x and x. With a minus, we do different signs. Subtract to get 3 would have to be 4 and 1. Minus takes the bigger number, so 1 is there. This tells me x is 4. This tells me x is negative 1. And then what we're looking to do is get the other variable, and that's why I circled this, to draw my attention at the end to finish the problem. To get any of the y's, just take our x's and add 3. So the y for this, take negative 1 and add 3, and that's 2. And we prefer to write those as ordered pairs. Put the 4 in. 4 plus 3 gives me a y of 7. So I write that as the ordered pair, 4, 7. If it's an odd, you can check it in the back. If it's from your teacher's paper, you can check it by looking at the paper. Yup. If it is not, or it's a quiz or something, you can always take these answers and plug them back in to check them, and that's usually a wise move when you're doing something that matters for points or for success or for whatever. Example 2, same kind of thing. It's just a little bit harder to get started because there's not any letter already alone. I'm going to have to pick a letter to get it alone. My favorite thing to look for on this is any variable that doesn't have coefficients or powers. So I'm looking here. That's the only letter in this problem that doesn't have a power or other stuff with it. So I'm going to get this y alone. To get rid of the add 3, I'll subtract 3. And there's my circle zone that I'm going to have to return to later. I created that from equation A, so I'm going to need to put it into equation B, where the y lives. So equation B is mostly copy. X squared plus 2x still equals negative 1. But where y used to live, there's now a group of things that I'll throw some parentheses to group it. 2x minus 3 just steps into that position. And now we're just going to do our thing. Do a distribute. Again, with x squareds and x's and numbers, we want the problem to equal 0. So these will make 5x squareds. We'll have to add the 1 over to do the opposite to get it equals 0. 5x and x is the way to make 5x squared. With a plus, these are the same as the other signs, a couple minuses. 1 is nice because it has to be 1 and 1. To verify that, we should FOIL. That's negative 1x, that's negative 5x. Together, that is negative 6x, so we're good. This would get me a 1/5 for this x. This would get me a 1 for that x. And all we need to do to finish this problem now is get the y's, and that's why I've circled this area. If I put the 1 in, 2 times 1 is 2, minus 3 is negative 1. So one of my answers is 1, negative 1. If I put a 5th in, 2 times a 5th is awkward, so use your calculator if you have to. 2 times a 5th is 2/5. 2/5 minus 3 would be negative 2 3/5, or if you'd rather, negative 13/5, or if you'd rather go decimal, negative 2.6, whatever you want to do with that, it's all good. Third one, again, it's about the same. There's not a great deal of variety in these. You're going to have to pick a letter to get a loan. This looks like the choice to me, because this has a 3, this has a 2, and a couple variables. This has a power. That y will be the easiest item to get a loan. Since it's adding, I'll subtract. So 1 minus 3x. Since that came from equation A, I'm going to put that into equation B. Since y equals this thing, that's going to just step right in there where the y is. Equation B is mostly repeated, but instead of where the y was, this now lives there. This is called substitution, because we're just substituting one thing for another. Distribute as we have been. Again, almost every question is going to have x squareds and x's and numbers. So we want to get everything combined on a side. Bring the 5, you'd subtract 5 to get it out of there so it can equal 0. And then we'll try to factor it. 7x with x to make 7x squared. Minus means these are different. So I'm going to say plus minus, but that's a guess. With 5, we need to go 1s and 5s. So I'm going to go 5, 1, that's a guess. And then we have to FOIL to verify our guesses. There's a positive 5x, there's a negative 7x. When negative 7 goes with positive 5, it is negative 2, and I guessed successfully twice, so hooray for me. This would give me an x of 1. Anytime there's a number in front of the x, that is going to be a fraction. The number with the x is on the bottom, and we're always changing our sign here. Maybe I should have said that back when I was on this problem. Switch the sign of the number. On this, we switch the sign of the number. But if there's a number with the x, that goes on the bottom as a fraction. So for our answers, the x is 1. If 1 goes into this, 3 times 1 is 3. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. If we put in the negative 5/7, negative 3 times negative 5, that would be a positive 15/7. If I have another positive 1, that's like 7/7. So 7/7 and 15/7 would be 22/7. And then I'll take a quick check by just looking at my paper and making sure those answers are right, and they are. One thing, I don't mean to deceive you, the examples might deceive you. It's not always going to be y that you get in this first circle zone. It could be x. Okay? When it is y, you always first will get the x's, and then the circle will get you a y. But there might be problems of your own choosing that you might choose to do an x here, get the y's first, and then the circle thing would get you the x's. If that is the case, just make sure when you write your answers that the x numbers always go first and the y's always go second. Sometimes students will make a mistake. If this were y figured out, sometimes they'll put the y's in the first slot because they got them first, and that isn't what you want to do. Y is always second, x is always first. This one is more of a pain to try to get a variable alone, because this has a square, this has a square. So we could be rooting those, but I don't think you want to do that. This we'd have to divide by 4 and deal with a negative. This you would have to divide by a 3, but maybe not as much deal with a negative. But if you're going to get either of these letters alone, let me see which one I did on my paper, just to stay consistent with the notes. Yeah, I got the x alone this time. So it feels easiest to get this alone, because you don't have to deal with the negative. So crash and burn a piece of chalk. Leave the 3x on its side. Do the opposite of subtracting, so the 4y can add out of there. And then we'll get the x alone to be 4/3 y. And there's our circle thing, which for the first time is an x. So I was have a moment of prophecy or something there. I guess I felt that one coming. Since that came from equation B, it's going to get inserted into equation A. X equals this stuff, so in that goes for X. When we go in for X, we're going to have to square everything. So I'll write that like this for a second. Squared. And most of that just copies. So the plus y squared equals 25 is just a copy. This, when it goes in for X, has to get squared. So this will be 16 ninths. 4 times 4 is 16. 3 times 3 is 9. Y gets squared. Plus a y squared equals 25. For most people, I think fractions make you uncomfortable. So if you don't like fractions, multiply everything by 9. Since there's a 9 on the bottom of this, multiplication by that 9 will eliminate that. It'll leave the 16. It'll change everything else. Multiply this by 9. Multiply this by 9. But you're probably feeling better about that. Combine like terms, 25y squared is 225. And I'm not going to solve this one by factoring because I don't have all the pieces. When I had x squareds and x's and numbers, I was definite on wanting to factor. But for this, since we don't have 3 terms, you can just try to keep trying to just get the y alone. I'll clear a small amount of board space here. So I go, to get the y squared alone, divide 25, we get 9. And then continue to do opposites. The opposite of squaring is rooting. The root of 9 is not just 3, it is also negative 3. There's 2 choices there. So we have a 3, we have a negative 3 as our choices. Then go to the circle. Take the 3 here, 4/3 times 3. This 3 is like it's over 1, so you could cancel. This would get you an x of 4. And you do not want to write 3, 4, because the 3 is a y, the 4 is an x. The x always comes before the y, so 4, 3. If we do a negative, it's the exact same thing. The 3 cancels the 3, it just leaves a negative, so that would get me a negative 4. So negative 3 for y's go second, negative 4 would be the x. Scroll to my paper to do my check. Those are correct, and we're working today on 452. 452 takes you from 1 to 14. So email me if you have any questions.